between you and me, right where you are right in this moment, is exactly where you were meant to be. So, wherever that may be, just be.
To be a new you.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the Joygasmic Life Podcast.
Your permission slip to raise your standards and live an even more amazing life. Now, if you're feeling like that's way out of the ball game and you're really suffering with like pain in your body, guilt, shame, anxiety, depression, like these emotions run a lot of people's lives, and that's not by accident. Our culture is set up to keep us in those emotions because it's easier to control people when they're in those emotions. But if you're on an awakening journey and you have recognized that those are there, you have taken the most crucial step to get out of that, which is to become aware that it's actually happening. It's time to awaken, to bring all the parts of yourself back to this present moment and explore the joy that is your life when you live full out, fully expressed, fully harnessing the joygasmic potential of your body and yourself. Anything is possible, and especially we are here to tell you that deep and fulfilling love is possible and is available for you when you choose that for yourself.
How do you actually go about creating better intimacy in your relationship? It's an interesting question. For most women, we have been trained and programmed to think that our pleasure doesn't matter, that the reason we have sex is to keep our husbands around and or to attract boyfriends, or I don't know. There are numerous other reasons that women say they want to have sex other than themselves and their pleasure. In today's episode, we're going to explore some of the ways that you can actually anchor into your pleasure and create more connection for yourself. Now, this journey is a lifelong journey that I have been on, absolutely. And one of the things that I have discovered is that it was actually incredibly challenging for me to explore what healthy intimacy was like. I had been raised in a pretty Christian household in which intimacy was not really talked about until after I started having intimacy as a teenager, which I found I really, really enjoyed. But at the same time, there's this really vivid memory of lying on my back as a teen and looking up at my partner and being like, I'm not having fun and I'm not going to tell you. And that probably means that our relationship is over. And, after that experience, there were several years, maybe almost 2 decades, maybe a decade and a half of me moving in and out of relationships where I actually felt really, really disempowered to actually talk about what it was that I wanted in intimacy and how exactly I was going to get it. And it wasn't until I encountered my beautiful friend, Ravenna Sky, who I will hopefully have on this beautiful podcast at some point in the future. And she started to teach me this idea of, do you like this or this? Because it can be really, really challenging to say, this is what I want. But when you are able to offer, because of the fear of rejection, the wonderful Reed Mihalko taught me that men are generally scared of giving feedback during blowjobs because they are scared that all blowjobs will disappear forever. I give feedback, it disappears forever. And this is unfortunately a really common experience that people have in intimacy. They ask for things and either the thing they're hoping for doesn't happen, the thing that they're wanting doesn't happen, or even asking causes a rift in communication. Now, lessons I have learned about asking for things in intimacy, unless you have a specific request that you can physically move a hand and go, put it here instead. Thank you. It can be really challenging. If you're asking about bigger topics like, hey, can we explore this whole range of new intimate things like maybe I'm curious about exploring some kink stuff, or maybe I'm curious about exploring some new positions. Having a conversation about intimacy outside of intimacy is absolutely the best way to go about doing this. If you are having pain, fear, drama from past exes come up, from past trauma come up, the intimacy is not really the place to do it. You can ask yourself, can I move through this right now on my own? Can I breathe through it? Can I move through it? Can I explore what it is to let this go temporarily right now in order to connect more deeply with myself and my partner and this intimacy that I'm in? The answer is yes, by all means, do that. If the answer is no, maybe you should ask for a pause. Maybe you should ask for a change, but be clear with your partner and say, hey, something's coming up for me right now. Do you want to talk about it? More often than not, in my experience, maybe not in yours, but in my experience, my partners were not really interested in stopping intimacy in order to talk about my exes. And unfortunately, because of the codependent relationships I'd been in, it was relatively common for me to do this. And unfortunately, because of the disempowered state of the men that I was interested in, they didn't really call me on it, which meant that more often than not, I would end up talking about my exes instead of having sex. Now, what does this point to? Because obviously that's not anybody's idea of like good sex, talking about your exes while you're, somebody's inside of you. I don't think so. Well, alternatively, instead, I could say, hey, I want to pause, maybe take 5 minutes. You hold down the fort, honey, and do whatever you need to do. I need a couple minutes to just process in my own body. And my God, the Joygasm alchemy technique was absolutely life-changing for this in terms of shifting the ability to really process that quickly. And we talked about this really beautifully in the podcast I just did with Tilly Storm, which I'll link to in the show notes, which talks about the experience of completing the trauma loop. And so as I got more and more experienced in processing trauma quickly while in intimacy, because that's where it's going to come up. It's going to come up in your intimacy because you're literally pushing the buttons. Pushing. Never mind. Anyway, I think it's funny. Because you're literally pushing the button, whether that's your cervix, your clitoris, the inability to speak in intimacy, whatever that might be, the button that's being pushed is the experience of sexuality. And when you empower yourself by saying, hey, this is a familiar experience. I'm having an uncomfortable response to something that generally is feeling okay, good, pleasurable. That generally, if people are engaged in intimacy, it's like you want it to be good. You're there because it is an experience that can feel good and pleasurable to you. So let's explore that. Let's explore that pleasure, and let's take the time to pause, acknowledge what you're feeling. If you got to go, honey, I just need to yell, fuck you. I don't mean fuck you. I just need to yell it in order to let go of whatever it is, anger that I'm feeling in my body. I don't mean it towards you. I'm going to scream it into the pillow. Grab a pillow, put it over your face, go, fuck you. And then, oh gosh, that loop is fixed, because maybe this happened to me. It's like cervix gets like jammed. It fucking hurts. And you want to say something, but you obviously don't want to yell fuck you at your partner. So the ability to have that tiny momentary piece of awareness, set the container for holding the transmutation of that emotion and then moving on. Another example would be the experience of getting caught in a place where I feel like you can't talk. So a lot of women end up in fight or flight response, but we don't talk enough about freeze. Fight is the F you, right? Flight is, I'm just going to roll over. I'm going to like hump him extra hard to make the intimacy stop and move on. Or freeze is like, I just going to keep lying here and hopefully he's done soon. And I wish I could say something, but I really can't say anything. And I'm totally scared and I don't know what to do. Okay. So if you find yourself in that situation where you know you need to be saying something and you're not doing it, this is where you bring forth a beautiful technique from Mel Robbins, which is count down from 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then just say something. Even if you can't say the thing that you want to say, that you know you need to say, that's probably replaying in your mind over and over again, like, honey, can we just slow down? Or honey, would you try touching this? Or whatever sort of endearing term you have for your partner, like, let's just try something different, or can we just pause? Can we just slow down for a minute? These are frequent things. I say these all the time less and less, but frequently in my intimacy, especially as I was really in that healing journey of moving from super challenging, continually potentially abusive relationships into a sacred partnership of loving kindness. So again, if you find yourself in that fight or flight situation, you can literally just go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hi, I need to say something, but I don't know how to say it. So I'm just going to start talking. And I'm really hoping that soon I'll be able to finish saying the thing that I need to say that really is just, can you please slow down? Or can you please not go as deep? Or can you please change what we're doing? Can we just pause for a second? Can you give me a hug? Can you hold me? I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling shy. I'm feeling pain in my body. Most men don't want you, if your partner is somebody you should stay with, they don't want you to be in pain in your intimacy unless that's what you're into and that's what you're exploring, right? But most men don't realize that they're hurting you. And maybe they're so caught up in how good the pleasure feels and the joy that they're inside of you and how grateful they are that they're not necessarily picking up on those subtle cues. And if you're not communicating anything, if you're not communicating those subtle cues, how could they possibly learn to read them if you're not giving them? Especially if you're anything like me and how I used to be, which is as long as I'm making sexy noises, everything's okay. And I learned early on in my terrible intimacy that as long as I was making sounds that sounded like, uh, uh, yeah, the men would just keep going. And they would assume everything was okay. And they call this like faking it till you make it. And here's the thing, faking it till you make it actually has the effect of, relaxes your throat, stimulates your vagus nerve, is actually going to make your body feel better and open you up to a certain degree. It will not get you the climax likely. It will not help solve your intimacy problems, but it will help you relax and release and create that. Or maybe, and so it's a good thing to do to help deepen your passion, but it is not like what I did, a way that you should be in order to get yourself through intimacy. It's not something to be in habit with. And is absolutely transformative for my relationship with intimacy when I gave myself permission to not make sound, to see what pleasure felt like when sound wasn't happening. So these are just some of my thoughts on ways to help get yourself out of challenging, stuck patterns in intimacy. If you found this valuable, there are absolutely so many more podcasts, so much more goodness for you. And I would love to have you as part of the Joygasmic Life community, where we are exploring on a weekly basis what it is to be a conscious mother who's got a rocking hot sex life and is serving the evolution of humanity and is creating an enlightened family for her beautiful children. Thank you so much for being here today. This is once again, Elena Harder of joygasm.me. If you are pregnant, make sure you go over to joygasm.me to get the free Joygasmic birth blueprint, which is your step-by-step process to creating the perfect nest for a joygasmic birth. And it's a really beautiful resource. I'm super proud of it. And I would absolutely love to hear what you think about the podcast, what you think about the course, and to share this journey in a deeper way with you on our weekly calls. So much love to you, so much beauty, so many joygasms. I love you. Have a beautiful day.